My boss handed me a gold watch on a Tuesday morning and told me it was time to think about my future. He had the whole thing staged, gift box centered on the desk, 2 HR people sitting against the wall, a folder thick enough to look serious. He smiled the whole time, like he was doing me the biggest favor of my life. What Brent Norwood didn't know was that the company paying his salary, funding his corner office, and covering his lease on a BMW he definitely couldn't afford on his own, all of it existed because of a decision I made 28 years ago with every dollar I had to my name. My name is Gary Whitfield. I'm 57. And I want to tell you something I've learned from nearly 3 decades of building things with my hands and watching other people take credit for them. The most dangerous man in any room is the one nobody thinks matters anymore. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I started Whitfield Industrial in 1996. I was 29 years old running a 2-man welding operation out of a rented shop on the east side of Dayton, Ohio. The place smelled like flux and cutting oil and old coffee that had been on the burner too long. In winter, the concrete floor stayed cold no matter how high you ran the space heaters. My hands were rough enough that I could pick up hot metal for a second or two before I felt it. That's the kind of work it was. I didn't come from money. My father ran a small machine shop until his back gave out, and I learned everything watching him: how to read a blueprint, how to talk to customers without sounding like you needed them more than they needed you, how to build something that would outlast the argument over whether it could be done. By the time I was 29, I'd spent 10 years saving every dollar I didn't spend on rent and groceries. I had one chance to do something with it, and I wasn't going to waste it. By 1998, I had 40 employees and 2 solid contracts with regional manufacturers. More importantly, I had something nobody else in the area had, a fabrication process I'd developed myself over 3 years of trial and error. A proprietary method for high-tolerance metal, joining that cut production time by 30% and reduced material waste in a way that nobody in the region could replicate. I filed a trade secret classification on the process, and 2 years later, patented a specific tooling application derived from it, continuation patent 2012, good through 2032. I still have the binder in a fireproof safe in my basement, next to Carol's letters. Carol was my wife. She was the only person outside of the business who knew the full picture. She used to sit at the kitchen table on Sunday mornings while I went through quarterly reports, and she'd read the newspaper and ask questions that were sharper than anything my accountant ever came up with. She passed in 2016. Pancreatic cancer, 7 weeks from diagnosis to the end. I don't talk about it much because there's no way to talk about it that does it any justice, so I'll just say she was the reason I built anything worth keeping and leave it there. After Carol, the only person who knew everything was Neil Carpenter. He's 61 now, a corporate attorney out of Columbus who I first hired in 2001 when the company got big enough that a handshake and a legal pad weren't sufficient anymore. Neil is the kind of lawyer who doesn't waste words. He charges accordingly and earns every dollar. Here's the part most people don't know. In 2004, I restructured my ownership through a shell company, WYG Holdings LLC. Neil is the registered agent. My name doesn't appear on any public-facing document connected to Whitfield Industrial. There are reasons for that: tax structure, competitive intelligence, and honestly, I'd watched enough business disputes to know that visible wealth attracts a certain kind of attention I didn't want. I also believed, and still believe, that a company runs better when the people in it aren't performing for the owner. You want to see how someone actually behaves, make sure they don't know you're watching. So for 28 years, I watched. I watched the company grow from that cold shop in Dayton to a 342-employee operation doing $160 million in annual revenue. I watched good people come up through the ranks and bad ones eventually wash out. I stepped back from day-to-day operations in 2019 and let the board handle hiring at the executive level. In 2021, that board brought in Brent Norwood as CEO. He was 37 at the time, MBA from Vanderbilt. He came with a presentation deck and a lot of language about transformation and velocity and what he called legacy friction, his term for experienced workers who remembered how things worked before he arrived. The board was impressed. I read the summary Neil sent me and thought, this man has never built anything, but I gave him room. That's always been my approach. Give people room, pay attention, and let the situation tell you the truth. The situation took about 2 years to finish talking. Brent's first year was mostly harmless. He reorganized the org chart, rebranded the company website, hired a marketing firm out of Cincinnati to redesign the logo. Things that look like progress from a distance. I noted it and said nothing. His second year was when the pattern started showing itself. He cut Dale Hutchins' team from 6 machinists to 4, citing workflow optimization. Dale is 55, been with the company since 2003, and can diagnose a tolerance problem by the sound the machine makes before the readout even catches it. The 2 men Brent let go had a combined 31 years of floor experience between them. Their replacements were younger, cheaper, and spent the first 3 months asking Dale questions the previous guys could have answered in their sleep. I heard about it through Neil, who heard it from the quarterly operations report. I made a note. Brent's 3rd year was when he stopped being a problem and became a threat. It started with a name I didn't recognize in a Neil's weekly summary. Garrison Fabrication, Indianapolis. They were a competitor, mid-size, aggressive, had been trying to crack the high-tolerance market for years without success. According to what Neil had pulled, Brent had taken 2 meetings with their VP of Business Development in a 4-month span. Both meetings were logged as industry networking. Neither was disclosed to the board. Then Neil flagged something else, an internal memo, routing number buried 3 levels deep in the operations filing system, referencing a proprietary process licensing evaluation scheduled for Q1. No details, no authorization chain that traced back to any board approval, just a line item sitting in a document most people would scroll past without stopping. I stopped. I called Neil that same evening. He already had the thread pulled halfway out. They're not just talking about licensing, he said. They're talking about a full process transfer. The tooling specs, the application data, everything tied to the 2012 continuation patent. Garrison wants the whole package, and from what I can read between the lines, Brent has been telling them it's available. He doesn't have the authority to make that offer, I said. He doesn't know that, Neil said. He thinks WIG Holdings is a passive investment vehicle. He thinks the patent belongs to the company operationally. He's never had reason to look at the founding shareholder agreement closely enough to know what Clause 12 actually says. Clause 12. I'd written it myself, with Neil's help, back in 2004 when we set up the shell structure. It prohibited any transfer, licensing, encumbrance, or reassignment of founding intellectual property, including all continuation patents derived from original trade secrets, without written approval from the majority shareholder of WIG Holdings. That was me, had always been me. Brent didn't know it existed, but that wasn't the worst part of that phone call. The worst part was what Neil told me next. There's one more thing, he said, and his voice went careful the way it does when he's about to say something he wishes he didn't have to. The internal memo I mentioned, the routing on it goes through Pete Langford's access credentials. I didn't say anything for a moment. Pete Langford, 15 years. We'd eaten lunch together on loading docks in 3 different states. I'd been the one who pushed the board to bring him on as project coordinator back in 2009 when he was between jobs and running out of options. I'd watched him grow into someone I trusted with schedules, with clients, with information that mattered. When Brent came in and started reshaping the company, Pete was one of the people I assumed would stay grounded. Stay honest. How deep is he in it? I asked. Deep enough, Neil said. Brent gave him a VP title 2 months ago, Operations VP. It wasn't posted internally, wasn't run through standard HR process. Just announced one Monday morning. I thought about the last time I'd seen Pete on the floor. He'd been wearing a new jacket. Not a work jacket, a dress jacket, the kind you wear when you've decided you're no longer the guy who stands next to the machine. He'd nodded at me the way you nod at someone you used to know. I'd thought he was just having a busy week. I sat with that for a long time after I hung up. There's a specific kind of hurt that comes from someone you brought along, deciding you're not worth the loyalty anymore. It's not like anger, which is loud and moves fast. It's quieter. It settles in somewhere behind your sternum and just stays there. I'm not going to pretend it didn't bother me, because it did, but I also knew even then that Pete's choice was Pete's to make and Pete's to live with. My job was to focus on what I could control. What I could control was the next move. Neil and I spent the following 3 weeks building the file, copies of the 2 Garrison meeting logs, the internal memo with Pete's credentials on the routing, email chains Neil had flagged through the legal discovery process that showed Brent representing himself to Garrison's team as the decision-making authority on IP licensing, a financial projection document dated 6 weeks earlier that Brent had apparently prepared showing Garrison the revenue potential of acquiring the process, a document that had never been shown to the board. And then I started carrying a recording device to work. Ohio is a one-party consent state. That means if you're part of a conversation, you can record it without telling the other person. I'd known that since 2004 and never had reason to use it. Now, I had reason. I wore it every day for 2 weeks. Most of what I recorded was unremarkable floor conversations, shift handoffs, the ordinary noise of a working facility. But on a Wednesday afternoon in the 3rd week, I was walking past the conference room on the 2nd floor when I heard Brent's voice through the half-open door. He was on a call. I stopped. The old-timers are the last piece of the puzzle, he was saying. Once we move Hutchins out and clear the floor supervisors who've been here since the beginning, there's nothing left tying the process to anyone who might make a claim on it. Clean slate. That's what Garrison needs before they'll sign. I stood in that hallway for another 10 seconds. Then I walked to my truck, sat in the driver's seat, and called Neil. "We're ready," I said. "I'll prepare the board notification," he said. Monday morning, the Tuesday before Monday came first. I was at my bench on the fabrication floor when Brent's assistant called down and asked me to come up to the executive level. No reason given, just Mr. Norwood would like to see you at 10. I wiped my hands on a shop rag, told Dale I'd be back in an hour, and took the stairs. Brent's office was on the 4th floor. It had been renovated the previous year. New furniture, frosted glass panels, a standing desk he never actually stood at. There was a view of the parking lot, and beyond it, the flat Ohio landscape going gray in November. He'd hung a framed print on the wall that said something about leadership and vision. I'd seen the same print in an airport once. He was already standing when I came in, which told me the whole thing had been rehearsed. Pete was there too, off to the side near the window, hands in his pockets, looking at a point somewhere above my left shoulder. 2 HR people sat against the far wall with folders open on their laps. On the desk, a small gift box, navy blue gold ribbon, and beside it, a folder. "Gary," Brent said, coming around the desk with his hand out. "Thanks for coming up. Sit down, please." He sat across from me. Pete didn't move from the window. "I want to start by saying that everything we're discussing today comes from a place of genuine respect," Brent said. He had a way of talking that made every sentence sound like a prepared statement. "You have been an absolutely foundational part of this company's story. Nobody in this room disputes that." I nodded and waited. "But we're at an inflection point," he continued. "The direction we're heading requires a different kind of organizational structure. Faster, more agile. And as part of that transition, we've been looking carefully at roles across every level." He paused. "We think this is a natural moment to talk about what your next chapter looks like." He pushed the gift box across the desk, then opened the folder and turned it toward me. It was a retirement package, structured generously enough to look serious. Lump sum payout, health coverage for 18 months, a letter of commendation already signed with Brent's signature. But I read carefully, the way Carol always told me to read everything carefully, and there it was in paragraph 7 of the attachment. 4 pages of IP rights language, dressed up in administrative phrasing. Effective upon my signature, all intellectual property associated with my role and tenure at Whitfield Industrial, including any patents, trade secrets, process documentation, or derivative works I had contributed to or overseen, would be formally assigned to the company. They wanted me to sign away the 2012 continuation patent, the one that covered the tooling application, the one Garrison Fabrication wanted. And they wanted me to do it thinking it was a formality. I opened the gift box. The watch was gold-toned, heavier than it needed to be, with my name engraved on the back. "Gary Whitfield, in gratitude for your service." I turned it over twice. Then I set it down. "The patent renewal maintenance fee," I said. "That's due in the next 30 days, isn't it?" Something shifted in Brent's expression. "Small, fast, gone. The company handles all IP renewals as a standard administrative function," he said. "This just consolidates the record keeping." Pete still wasn't looking at me. I closed the folder. I leaned back in the chair and took a breath. The way you do when you're in no hurry and you want the other person to know it. Then I reached into my jacket pocket and took out my phone, the old one, cracked screen in the lower left corner, 3 generations behind whatever Brent was carrying. I dialed Neil. He picked up on the second ring. "Neil," I said, "it's Gary. Activate Clause 12 of the WIG Holdings Founding Shareholder Agreement. Freeze all pending IP transfers and any documentation currently in the execution queue. Prepare emergency board notification. Full attendance required Monday morning, 9 o'clock. The silence in that office was the kind that has physical weight. You could feel it pressing against the windows. Brent's mouth opened, then closed. "Understood, Mr. Whitfield," Neil said. His voice was the same as it always was, level, unhurried, completely in control. Board notifications will go out tonight. The asset freeze is effective immediately. Is there anything else? That's all for now, I said. Thank you, Neil. I ended the call. Brent had gone pale in the way people go pale when the ground drops out from under them. His voice, when it came, had lost the practiced quality it always carried. Mr. Whitfield, he said. Not Gary anymore. What? How do you? Wig Holdings LLC, I said. Registered agent Neil Carpenter, Columbus, Ohio. Majority shareholder, 51%, since the day this company was incorporated. I stood up. That patent you've been promising to Garrison Fabrication isn't yours to promise. It never was. Pete turned from the window then. He was looking at me directly for the first time since I'd walked in. His face had gone through something. I couldn't tell if it was shame or just the particular blankness of a man recalculating. I looked at him for a moment. Not with anger. Just looked the way you look at something you used to know well and are seeing clearly for the first time. I picked up the watch from the desk and set it back in the gift box. Closed the lid. I'll see everyone Monday, I said. Then I walked out, took the stairs back down to the floor, and finished the job I'd been working on before any of this started. Monday came in cold and overcast, the kind of November morning in Ohio where the sky sits low and flat and the air smells like iron. I put on the charcoal jacket Carol had picked out for me years ago at a department store in Columbus. She'd said it made me look like someone who made decisions. I hadn't worn it in a while. I drove downtown and met Neil in the lobby of the Whitfield Industrial Headquarters building at 8:45. He had his briefcase and the look he gets when everything is in order, calm in a way that isn't casual, the way a surgeon is calm before he starts. We rode the elevator to the 14th floor without saying much. There wasn't much that needed saying. The boardroom had floor-to-ceiling windows on the north wall, long table, 12 leather chairs, a projection screen at the far end. Faye Norris was already there when we walked in, seated 2 chairs from the head of the table, reading something on her phone. She looked up and nodded at me with the expression of someone who had been waiting for this for longer than she'd said out loud. Cliff Pemberton came in 2 minutes later, poured himself a coffee from the credenza, and took a seat without ceremony. The other board members filed in over the next 10 minutes, 8 in total, plus the 2 Brent had brought on 18 months ago, a consultant type from Nashville, and a finance guy who'd been nodding along with everything Brent said since day one. They both sat down near the middle of the table and kept their eyes on the surface in front of them. Brent came in last, with Pete beside him and 2 attorneys I didn't recognize carrying leather portfolios. Brent had dressed for the occasion, dark suit, blue tie, the full presentation, but his face told a different story. 3 days without enough sleep has a specific look, and he was wearing it. He took a seat toward the far end of the table. Pete sat 1 chair away from him and did not look in my direction. I sat at the head of the table. Neil set up the laptop and connected to the room's display system. Nobody spoke. Thank you all for being here, I said. I'll keep this straightforward. Neil put the first slide on the screen. Wig Holdings LLC. Corporate structure, formation date, registered agent. Second slide, ownership breakdown. Clean and simple. My name at the top. Gary Whitfield. 51% controlling interest. Founder. Present since day one. I watched the room process it. The board members who hadn't known, which was most of them, went through the same sequence. Confusion, recognition, and then a kind of settling, like something that had felt slightly off for a long time had just been explained. Faye didn't react much because I don't think she was entirely surprised. Cliff set down his coffee cup carefully. Brent's 2 attorneys leaned toward each other and started whispering. I walked them through the rest of it without rushing. The Garrison Fabrication meetings, dates, attendees, what was discussed. The internal memo routed through Pete's credentials. The email chain where Brent represented himself to Garrison's team as the authorizing party on IP licensing. The financial projection document he'd prepared for Garrison without board knowledge or approval. And then the audio from last Wednesday's conference room, played through the room's speaker system. Brent's own voice, clear and unhurried, explaining that removing the long-tenured floor supervisors would give Garrison the clean slate they needed before signing. Nobody moved during the recording. When it finished, the room stayed quiet for a moment. Faye spoke first. I move for the immediate termination of Brent Norwood from all executive and board-adjacent roles, effective today. Her voice was even like she was reading from a prepared statement she'd had ready for a while. Seconded, Cliff said, without hesitation. I called the vote. 7 in favor. Brent's 2 appointees abstained. They didn't vote against him, but they didn't defend him either. That said enough. The motion carried. Brent sat with his hands flat on the table. He wasn't performing anymore. The practiced confidence was gone, and what was underneath it was just a younger man who had made a very large miscalculation and was now sitting inside the full weight of it. One of his attorneys put a hand on his arm and said something quietly. Brent didn't respond. He looked at me after a moment. I don't know exactly what he was looking for. Some indication that this was personal. Maybe. Some version of this where I was angry and he could push back against that. But it wasn't personal. That was the honest truth. I didn't build this company to protect it from people like him specifically. I built it because it was worth building. And when someone tries to sell off what you spent 3 decades constructing quietly, with paperwork and a gold watch, you don't owe them anger. You just owe it the truth. Security will meet you downstairs, Neil said, sliding a single document in front of Brent. Your access credentials are deactivated as of this moment. Please don't log into company systems after you leave this floor. Brent stood up slowly. He straightened his jacket, which was the kind of reflex that happens when there's nothing else to do with your hands. Then he walked out, his attorneys beside him. Pete followed without speaking. At the door, Pete stopped for just a second. He didn't turn around then. He kept walking. I heard he submitted his resignation the following Friday. I didn't contest it, and I didn't try to reach him. Some things don't have a conversation waiting at the end of them. Faye Norris stepped in as interim CEO while the board ran a proper search. Her first call on Monday afternoon was to Dale Hutchins. She told him his position was secure. His team would be restored to 6, and that the company valued what he knew. Dale called me that evening and said, I always figured there was more going on with you, Gary. Then he laughed, and I laughed, and that was about all that needed to be said. I still drive the same truck. I still walk the floor some mornings with a coffee, talking to the guys who do the actual work. The ones who know the sound a machine makes before the readout catches up. I left the gold watch on Brent's desk the morning he left. Didn't want it. Never did. Here's what I've learned in 57 years of building things. The men who construct something real rarely put their names on the outside of it. They just keep showing up, keep working, keep paying attention. And the men who arrive one day and start treating what others built like it belongs to them. They always, eventually, have to answer for it. Sometimes all it takes is one phone call. The men who try to take what they didn't build always make the same mistake. They assume that quiet means weak, that patience means unaware, and that a man in a flannel shirt has nothing left worth fighting for. Power doesn't announce itself. It just waits.